So, two governors in blue states are joining forces in the wake of Donald Trump's re-election to, quote, protect the state-level institutions of democracy. The new initiative, launching today, is called Governors Safeguarding Democracy and aims to provide a playbook for governors across the country seeking to push back against the upcoming administration. GSD describes one of its key goals like this, quote, by supporting state leaders with tools, knowledge, and resources to protect and strengthen state democratic institutions, GSD seeks to ensure that American democracy remains vibrant, resilient, and responsive to the needs of its people. Joining us now are the co-chairs of GSD, Democratic Governor J.B. Pritzker of Illinois and Democratic Governor Jared Polis of Colorado. Governor Polis is also chair of the National Governors Association. Governor Pritzker, I'll start with you. What types of things will GSD be preparing for?
Well, let's start with the idea that there are a number of things that have been brought up during the campaign and now post his election that President Trump's administration intends to go after. An example of that is you've heard talk about bringing prayer back into public schools, as they say. The reality is that there's a constitutional bar against that, separation of church and state. And the question is, what will they be doing to try to enforce that, and how on a state level can we uphold the U.S. Constitution while the administration may be coming after, this vitally important freedom that people have from having to be forced to, into some sort of organized prayer in public school. So, we've got a lot of issues like that, privacy issues around tracking people who may be seeking to exercise their abortion rights. And we want to make sure that apps can't track them, or at least that those companies can't provide that information to any other states or to the federal government.
Okay.
Governor Polis, though, isn't the issue of prayer in school, isn't that a court issue that'll end up at the U.S. Supreme Court?
Well, look, I think what we want to really lean into here is making sure that states are equipped to protect our Constitution and protect our democracy. That means the independence of the courts itself, the independence of that institution, the rule of law, election integrity, and is another great important concern. And really by collaborating, governors can really work together, whether it's this administration or any administration. There's always going to be issues we disagree and issues we agree on, but making sure we play by a rule book that it really works for our country and works for our people and remains loyal to our Constitution.
So, Governor Pritzker, we had reporting earlier this show about the Trump's efforts ramping up for their impending mass deportation program, even the construction of new facilities outside major cities, potentially Chicago being one of them in your home state. How do you see the role of Democratic governors, blue state governors, in terms of the relationship with the federal government if they do carry out these mass deportation plans and if they rely on state and local officials and law enforcement to do so?
Well, let me start by saying that we want to make sure that, of course, if there are undocumented immigrants who are committing violent crime, we want them off the streets. We want help from the federal government if we need it. But we also want to make sure that there isn't a violation of people's rights with, raids, for example, that are done in coordination with local law enforcement on people who are, frankly, holding down jobs and have been in this country for many, many years. We think that's improper. And in Illinois, that's not something that we would condone. There's been some talk about using other states' National Guard, red state National Guards to somehow come into a blue state and try and enforce these new Stephen Miller-inspired rules. And that's just not something we're going to accept. But I want to just key off of something that Jared said. Importantly, we each have ideas that some of which we've acted upon over the last 6 years and some of which are still needing to be acted upon. And each state has a different situation in which they may want to act upon that. For example, there are states where you've got a party in control of the governorship, but not in control of the legislature. So that governor may only be able to put in place executive orders. Another state like mine, where we've got Democratic control of the House and the Senate and and the governorship, we may be able to do much more, and will be. And so I think the idea here is to create a catalog, to create dialogue amongst the governors about what is possible. And if you wanted to pursue something in your state, and it will be different in each state, that's available to you. And this organization will support you in doing that.
Governor Polis, I just sort of question 30,000 feet looking down on this. How do you balance being the loyal opposition and doing what the loyal opposition has always done in American politics, but also recognizing the results of the last election and understanding that you two represent two of the only states between the coasts where Republicans didn't sweep to victory by pretty convincing margins?
Well, look, President-elect Trump won the election. We're going to work with him and his administration however we can for our state, whether it's the U.S. Forest Service managing our public lands, whether it's working to make sure that our priorities are met and funding transportation and transit. And we look forward to that relationship. At the same time, I think it's very important that we double down on defending our small d democratic institutions, making sure that elections in the future, decisions of the courts, the rule of law, continue across administrations, Republican and Democratic. So we're always going to have our agreements and disagreements in the moment, but I think it's also important to take a step back and say, let's make sure that the America we cherish and that we love is as strong as ever on our 250th birthday in 2 years.
All right, Democratic governors. Go ahead, Governor Pritzker.
Sorry, I just wanted to add that you know, Joe mentioned loyal opposition. We are loyal. We are loyal to the Constitution and are loyal to the people of our states. And so this isn't about, you know, creating some massive divide. Indeed, this is just about responding to concerns that governors will have about dealing with what seems to be an onslaught from the new administration.
Appreciate that. Democratic governors J.B. Pritzker of Illinois and Jared Polis of Colorado. Thank you both very much for being on this morning.